we are live now. Hello, everyone. I'm Anna. I'm from Mars, as you know. So if you ever want to talk about Mars, about partnering with us, or just chat, hit me up. And with me today is awesome Sarah, the founder of Good Business Club, the optimist of good business, and also an impact entrepreneur. So Sarah, could you please tell about yourself a little bit? I'm getting sick, sorry about my voice. So Sarah, the stage is all yours today.
Thanks, Anna. Yeah, thank you for having me. It's really great to discover what you guys are up to, and also have you come to one of our events as well to kind of see what we're up to. Yeah, my name's Sara Osterholzer, and I'm an impact entrepreneur, good business optimist. I do think that the world of business is changing, and there's a different future ahead of us, and we're on the journey of how do we shift models that are having a more positive impact on people and planet, and taking some responsibility for the impact that they're having. And I've been working in this space for nearly a decade, everything from employee number one with founders, helping founders take their ideas and get them out into the world, to working in the business support space, so running accelerator programs, designing and delivering event series, workshop series, and then most recently co-founded the Good Business Club, which is a social enterprise, and we support good business owners to set up sustainable businesses without having to have decades of experience behind them. And we do that by helping them tap into the experience and the expertise of other members in the community, so that they can either skill themselves and their team up, they can collaborate and work with each other, or they can just pick someone's brains and learn from the lessons as well from ahead of them. Because ultimately, I think good business owners, our kind of superpower is collaboration, and there's a hive of knowledge out there and people who are really willing to contribute to other people's journeys as well. So the community is all about that, bringing that together, creating meaningful spaces to have very honest conversations about the challenges of running a good business, and not doing it in isolation, so we actually can stand a better chance to be more successful in the long term.
Awesome. And thank you so much, like you said, for giving me a chance to experience it, because we met with Sarah maybe a month and a half, something like that, and she was telling me about the Good Business Club, and then she had this brilliant idea of just like issuing me the guest pass to it. And when it went, I was an outsider. I didn't know what to expect, but the experience was amazing. And I really loved how everyone was super honest about their experiences, like what they need, what they're struggling with. So everyone came up with something to offer and something to take from the community. So that was beautiful. So thank you for doing this. It's a great initiative. So yeah, and I know a little bit more about the Good Business Club. So could you tell more about it? Like, why was it born, right? Out of what kind of problem or pain?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I, at the time before I set up the club, had been working in another business network, and one of the things that I saw kind of coming up, so the organization was fully funded, so we had very specific projects we were working on a very kind of niche kind of group of people, and we used to get a lot of phone calls come through from people just having very basic questions, asking for support in different areas, kind of looking to fill their knowledge gaps. And we also had other service providers also reach out to us and go, look, we want to support people who are doing good. How can we also get in touch with them? And we didn't really have a mechanism just to connect the dots, which is kind of where the idea started in my own brain, I guess. What actually triggered it was that organization I was working for went into administration, and we were only told 24 hours before we had to stop trading, and we're all made redundant. So I kind of went and thought didn't want the network that I'd kind of invested in creating as well to completely disappear. We're offering real value in the world. And I decided at that time to then co-found it with another social entrepreneur who runs an ethical supermarket, who really shared my views in terms of bringing people together and tapping into that collective knowledge. So we kind of started from scratch of like, okay, if we're creating it now, what would we do differently? What do we put out in the world? but ultimately, what do we want to test as well, just to figure out whether this was something that was needed. So we had our kind of key assumptions. The first year was like, let's just get it out there and see what comes back, really. And then after a year, yeah, we'd I'm trying to think how many members we got in the first year. I can't remember on the top of my head, but enough to be like, this is clearly something that's of value. And then for us, it's really trying to figure out what we were trying to do and how we were trying to do it. So we were clear of the impact of bringing people together and helping them connect with each other. So we just do that in different ways. So whether that's the online forum that gives members direct access to each other so that they can ask questions, they can contribute to each other, they can refer people, share resources, all of that. We do the online networking events, which is the one that you attended, which is that light structure of making networking a bit easier, basically, and focus more on practical things. We have informal social events that are in person in different areas across the UK. So that's coffee mornings, after work drinks, less structured, more about community, but also just the sprinkling of serendipity of where those conversations might lead. So it kind of started from an understanding of the power of bringing people together, also a situation that I kind of found myself into, an opportunity to give starting up a business a go. And we're about to reach our fourth birthday actually in November. So yeah, evolved a lot, obviously, as I think a lot of businesses the last couple of years. But yeah, we've got members now across 30 cities across the UK.
Wonderful. But you started small, you started local, right?
Yeah.
So how do you grow a community? And especially now, maybe, or over the pandemic, right? It would maybe be a little bit easier with the internet, with everything going online. But how did you grow offline community? How did you make sure, you know, you get the people who share your values and like want to contribute?
Yeah, I think it was really interesting because our first year was the year before the pandemic. So we went into our second year, like I said, having tested everything and got clear of what we wanted to do. And our strategy was all in-person events, basically.
Yeah.
So March hit, obviously lockdown happened. We had to throw that strategy out the window, and all we really spent doing that first 6 months was listening to what the community needed and seeing how we could, enable that to happen. So the first week of the lockdown, we set up a Zoom call. Fortunately, I've been working with businesses, like I said, in my startup world, with businesses across the world using Zoom. So I was fairly familiar with the kind of tools. And we just brought people together and said, look, if you need help or you can support other people, come on this call. Let's just figure out what's needed. And that's now evolved into what the networking for results events are. And then we were just kind of going into the community and going, okay, how can we connect? If members are struggling with, let's say, their marketing and understanding where they should be putting their efforts, who in the club can help with that? We would then go to those members who had that experience or expertise, host workshops on that, and enable members to tap into that kind of knowledge as we went. And I guess that was one element. The other element was the online forum. So we use Slack as a tool to bring our community together virtually. I think what's interesting about that, so in the other kind of startups I worked with, I've also done community management, and there's a lot around how to actually create a safe and engaging space. It's not just about having the platform and expecting people to use it, right? So we had to think really carefully about what is it we're trying to encourage our members to do, how do we want them to use those spaces, and what actually makes a difference. One, to enable them to easily do that, but also ask the right sorts of questions, have the same sorts of discussions that we'd love to see. So that was a lot of, I guess, time dedicated to understanding what we as a team could do to enable that to happen, building the habit. But now as new members are joining, they're coming into a space that is active and live, and the conversations are happening. So I think it's much easier for them to kind of engage in that. But I think that was a big part of that first year, was, utilizing some of those tools and understanding there's a lot that we have to do to carefully curate those spaces so that they are highly impactful in that way. And like you said, we'd started in one area. So we started in Brighton and kind of Worthing, which is on the outskirts. And when the pandemic hit, we then had businesses reach out to us and go, oh, we've just discovered what you're up to. We really need support. Can we join? And they were in different parts of the UK. But because we were completely virtual, we were like, yeah, of course, why not? Come along, join the online forum, come to the online events. So what's been interesting is the growth strategy wasn't what we thought it was going to look like over the last couple of years. But obviously, as we've now eased out of the kind of existing virtual world and the need for in-person has come back, we are now working with members and like ambassadors in different areas in the UK to bring those kind of more social events back to life, and looking at how we can partner with other organizations to unlock and create those kind of hubs locally, as well as enabling those members to tap into the kind of wider network virtually as well.
Awesome. All right. But and I love how you grew organically just because people started hearing like about what you're doing. But how do you basically take the idea, right? And it's an awesome idea, right? And but a lot of awesome ideas just die because people don't know where to go and like how to find their customers. And so how about the customer discovery? What do you do with the idea? Where do you go? So what was your story?
Yeah, I think for us it was quite interesting because it was a little bit of an evolvement from what I was already doing. Myself and my co-founder have been working in the good business space between us like nearly 2 decades. So I think we had quite an existing network already when we launched, of people who knew us well, understood what our kind of bigger picture was. So our founding members were people who were very close to us, very open to feeding back and helping us develop what the business actually looks like today. So I think that made a difference. I think so, like immediately having a community and growing your network, I think is really key to that, which is obviously part of what we're trying to encourage our kind of members to do as well, to be like, you can be doing in this isolation and everything will just be a lot harder and more challenging along the way. But if you could actually bring people around you who want to support you, who can either contribute to you directly or support you with growing that network, with getting in front of your audience, like that's a key part to success, right? So our first year, as well as testing the actual offering, was just shouting as far and wide as we could about what we were doing. I think I really understood that we had to create a very trusted, incredible brand as soon as possible, really. So it was thinking about who can we partner with that other people know and trust already in terms of our audience. How can we be contributing to other activity that's going on, collaborating in that way, but also thinking about each touch point being really valuable in that sense as well. So that was a lot of the focus. I said the first couple of years was just really building that brand, getting as far wide as possible, and creating impactful touch points with our audience as we went along. That now is even growing much more organically, having put all that kind of hard work in at the beginning, I reckon.
That's great. It's great that it worked for you. But also, I really loved how you said that it's one thing to just give people a place or a space to communicate, but it's really silly to just think that they are just going to do it and like know what to do about it. So how did you do it? How did you basically set up the boundaries or like told your community what this is for and what is basically what are the rules of communication there?
Yeah, and I think this is an area I find really fascinating. So I think the key insight I first got was launching an online community for investors in one of the first companies that I worked with, and we'd invested a lot into this amazing tech, really like developed the idea, listening to our audience, and then launched it, and not a single person engaged with it. And we were really just dumbfounded, like, this is what you wanted, you said you wanted it, we've created it, why are you not here? And I think really being curious and understanding human behavior is really important to be a community manager, and understanding some of those things, like why would someone not want to engage in certain things. So I think there's different levels of understanding around that. So one is if you really listen to people, you'll hear that people can communicate more easily in different ways. So and we experienced this actually through the pandemic as well. Some members would just not come on Zoom. sitting in front of a camera on a laptop was either really uncomfortable, felt really disconnected. For whatever reason, they wouldn't get any value from it. Whereas for other people, like for me, I feel like I'm sitting right in front of you, Anna, right now. Anyway, right? Like that's just how I engage in this certain kind of world. So I think understanding that people need different things is really important. And then understanding, okay, what is it that will make a difference? So a lot of what we're trying to do is create safe enough spaces that someone can put their hand up and share something that they otherwise wouldn't share, especially with strangers. So in the introduction to the events that we're doing, for instance, we try to break that down by being very honest and vulnerable as hosts about our challenges and setting the tone of what kind of conversations are we going to have here today, and acknowledging some of that just as part of the introduction. We also lean on existing members who are part of that culture as ways to instigate some of that. So again, in the events, we always go to our members first and go, what's your ask? What's your offer? Or we encourage members when they come to us with a question as a team, we go, well, why not pop that onto the Slack and see what other members have to say about it? So it's kind of helping them build habits to create that. This is what kind of conversations are happening here, so that when other people are looking in, they're going, oh, wow, this person shared that kind of question. Maybe I can share this sort of question. And again, having certain members who are more engaged with things or setting the tone for some of that stuff and just kind of encouraging this little habit. So we've thought about it from the onboarding perspective as well. So how are we introducing the different platforms, opportunities for members? What are we saying when we're actually introducing them? What we are encouraging them to do? And then having that just consistently. Yeah, like I said, the first year of the pandemic, it was every day for a couple of months, it was doing this and encouraging it. Now that space has been created, we have to do that less, because the new people who are coming in are already coming to a space where that's kind of flourishing. I think the beginning, it's really important to be consistent and be patient as well, because it's not just going to happen overnight, but you need to really be aware and thinking about how are people engaging and what is it that you need them, what you're trying to create there, basically.
Awesome. And have you had any, fear maybe that this cannot be monetized, right? Because a lot of times you can see that there are Slack communities, right, or Discord communities, and people just see it as a vessel to communicate, but they don't really see enough value to pay for it. So have you had any challenges with monetizing it, and how did you do that?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. So like I said at the beginning, when we said we were going to go in and just test it, it was because the existing network that I was part of wasn't paid for. A lot of what exists in terms of typical networks have complete different price variations. But a lot of people, when we started, were just like, it's not going to work. People aren't going to pay money for this. You're going to have to get funding, and that's the only business model you can expect. And being the rebel that I was like, I don't know, I think we could do it differently. Let's see. And I think what's really, my co-founder and I really share the value of high quality. And before this kind of rise of good businesses were kind of seen as this pink and fluffy nice thing. People are doing some nice thing in the world, and we're like, no, actually, this is business. Like for us, we're taking it seriously. And yes, you can go over here for some free thing that might be a bit naff, but if you come here, you're going to get high quality. We're going to enable you to actually develop your business, and you're going to get real value from it. That's the bar that we were setting, right? So we kind of went in with a lot of people looking in and just going, it's not going to work. We went in open-minded, going, what do we need to prove that it might work? So that first year actually was a lot around the pricing and understanding that element of it. And I think what I've also gone in thinking from the beginning was, it isn't going to be just one income stream that sustains the whole model. And we are a social enterprise, so it means we're not doing this, myself, my co-founder, for individual gain. My goal has always been, how can we build a business that's sustainable, so it sustains a team to deliver on everything it's committed to and continue to offer value. So the membership income that we kind of generate is about accessibility, but actually just about having a bit of skin in the game so that our members feel like it's an investment and they feel like they're going to come in and engage with it. So that's part of also the psychology around what we're setting up as a community. We then also looked at event income as one element of the income stream, and then sponsorship being that element that really sustains a lot of the module. So I think it's about kind of thinking a bit more creatively about it, really. And I think the key thing for me has always been, you know, what is the quality, what's the value, how are you different to other things? Yeah. And we're doing things differently, right? That's what we're doing in business differently. And I think a lot of people come in and they're like, oh, you're like this, and you're like, no, not really. Like that, I know that's the old model of networking, but we're not actually. We're kind of putting everything on its head and doing it differently, and accepting that we're not going to be for everybody, but the businesses that do come and engage, we do see them get the high quality value that they're kind of investing in.
Oh, right. So you never actually went for funding?
No, we got some funding this year to enable us to capacity build, to kind of get to that next level in terms of building the team. But I'm still quite adamant that I don't want to rely on funding, because a social enterprise should be reliant on trade, and that's what we wanted to prove, is that you actually can sustain a social enterprise on trade rather than being reliant on funding.
Right. So yeah, I completely agree with you, and that's what came up quite a few times in the past podcasts. So that not every founder, not every business needs funding, and you know, if you're comfortable with it and you're sustainable, you know, why push if everyone's around happy?
Yeah, I think it's like different business models, different sorts of businesses you're trying to create, and also I think there's challenges in everything, right? We've worked with members in the club even who have raised investment and have come up with challenges on the other side of that. We've had people who are completely bootstrapping, and obviously there's challenges around that. We have people who invested some of their money before they get to the traded income. I think people will try to create different sorts of businesses, and sometimes you need different kind of channels to get there, but I don't think there is like a one size that works for everybody, and I think it needs to be just reviewed and assessed as we go. It might be that at some point we decide to take on funding for whatever reason to potentially get to that next level, and there's different sorts of funding out there as well, right? Everything from investment, loans, grants, all of it. So but I think for me the key thing is not being reliant on a certain funding consistently to sustain the whole model.
Okay, I understand. But what was the most challenging in this whole journey? I mean, you went from offline to to adjusting to the pandemic, then back again, convincing people that it's gonna work, convincing that they should pay for it. What of it was the most challenging for you?
That's a good question. Interestingly, actually, I have found this year, so I kind of into our fourth year, the most challenging, and I don't know if that's because I've worked in the startup world all my career, so the early stage, the uncertainty, the testing, the developing, all of that is very comfortable to me in a sense, to be in that kind of world. We were also very fortunate, I think, being so early in our journey, that we were a very lean model when the pandemic hit. So it wasn't like we had to suddenly make a lot of really tough decisions in terms of team, or had to be very critical about things. So I think that gave us at least the space to really just listen, reflect, and evolve, and without having to push things, it kind of naturally came to us. But I think, yeah, in terms of like, I'm just thinking of it, the most challenging times have definitely been this year, like when I'm literally like frustrated and sometimes not sure how we're going to sustain certain things. Cash flow, as ever, I think is one of the biggest challenges, and ensuring that. And I think as you grow and take on more responsibility, especially with growing a team, suddenly that is a bigger responsibility. You're kind of playing a slightly bigger game in that sense as well. So I think just managing those situations as they come up has been tough, but I've built a really amazing advisory board around me, and I have peers in the club as well who I go to who are steps ahead of me when we're coming up with challenges, and I'll kind of pick their brains and realize it's all very natural, and how to go about those things as well.
Right. And that's another thing that I think a lot of founders need to understand. And again, referring to the past episodes, we also came to this decision that, you know, everyone thinks that, oh, their journey is just so unique. But it's really, really important to have this, you know, drive, to have this community of founders behind you, to understand that absolutely everybody experiences that, and you're not alone. This is normal. So yeah,
100%. I think that makes a real difference, and it kind of whenever I kind of realize that, it helps me kind of step away from the, like, I guess the ego side of it, of like, what does this mean about me, and am I failing, and all that kind of narrative that gets in the way, that stops you from actually taking action. Whereas if you're like, okay, this is part of the journey of starting up a business, I think when you ask that question, I laugh, because a lot of the challenging things I look back on and go, wow, I learned so much about myself, or about how to develop the business, or how to run the business from the most challenging times. So you have to go through the challenges. I think it is more about how do you respond to them. So if you're sitting there in isolation, not knowing what to do, worried about what people are going to think about you, so you're not going out and engaging, that time is going to be longer and more painful. I've grown into a much better habit now when things get tough. Normally my co-founder is the first person I'll call, or someone in my advisory group, or one of my peers. And I try to get to that point as quickly as possible now if something goes wrong, so that actually I can have that conversation, realize that actually I'm already thinking about things probably quite logically, or I need to stop for a moment, take a breather, take a break, and then come at it fresh. But that kind of, I guess, the time period and therefore the pain area is much shorter, because I am going to my community to go lean on them when I need it, and I can kind of get back and focus and kind of take action around it as well.
Right, absolutely. So what are the challenges that other founders share with you? Because I know you're a very open community, right? You try to support each other. And I've heard even some challenges at the meeting that I took with you. So what are the most common challenges of a startup, and especially of solo founder bootstrapping?
Yeah, I think the kind of key areas, so specifically, I guess we're looking at businesses that are doing things differently. So trying to align people and planet in their decision-making process while trying to sustain the business, right? So I think what is quite interesting when people kind of ask that question of like, what are the biggest challenges? When it comes to the impact side, there normally isn't the challenge. It's not like, how can we have more of an impact? Like, we have really interesting discussions around how we can do business better in certain areas and sharing practice. But the areas that we kind of hear the most either sit underneath funding and financing. So yeah, either how to access capital or how to look at a model to sustain the business. Marketing, so really understanding audiences, how to get in front of them impactfully, and kind of create that credible brand. And then sales. So that's obviously kind of key piece of the puzzle. Are you actually bringing income in consistently to sustain the whole model? And as like you said, I think if we then segment it more specifically to solopreneurs, the biggest challenge is they normally have experience and expertise in one area of something they're doing, and they're now having to juggle all of it. So it might be that they're really experienced potentially like in something like the marketing side or the product development, but suddenly they're having to sell it. They're having to figure out how to manage the finances. They're figuring out, who the audience is, how to consistently turn up, how to, be a team leader and grow a team. There's suddenly all these different expertise and experiences that you have to be able to understand, which is overwhelming. There's a lot of pressure, and if not done well, you are sometimes wasting resources, right? So you can be kind of frustrated trying to understand how to market, and you're not going about it properly, right? So you're starting at the wrong point, or you're doing the wrong things. So a lot of, again, what we're trying to do is help members tap into that and go, okay, you're struggling with marketing, like here's some people who are literally experienced in this area. Have a conversation with them, maybe they can skill you up or help you with those elements. Here are some other founders who've gone through that. Go talk to them about how they approached it. Did they decide to take it on? Did they decide to delegate it? Go and figure out how other people have done this as well, so that you can grow the business without having to be all on your shoulders.
Right. Right. The resources are everything. And it's great that you mentioned the impact and, purpose beyond profit, because everyone's talking about it. And it's a bit of a buzzword, even like everyone wants to make an impact. But what does it mean? And how do you measure impact that your startup generates?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So the way that I see, I guess, a good business and how we describe it, it's like I said, it's creating making decisions not at cost at people and planet, but again, that's still very kind of top level, right? So the way that we've broken it down in the club, and we've worked with our members to kind of create what we call a good business framework to give business owners and leaders more kind of focus of where they look. So we look at 6 different areas, 3 of them a bit more internal, 3 more kind of external, and we've kind of identified lots of different ways you can be having an impact there. And as businesses, we pledge to do good business in all those areas and constantly are evolving and learning. So I think one of the key things to highlight before we go into it is there is no end destination in the way that we see it. We're not looking at accrediting businesses and going, you're in the club, you're a good business, well done. Like it's a journey, and it's not about the destination. It's about always constantly improving and evolving. We're still in the world where we're still, like I said, debating, trying to understand and discovering what it even means. So having said that, the kind of 6 areas we look at. So one is employees. So the individuals that are coming into your business, what is your relationship and what is work like for them? So one, how are you potentially enabling people who potentially aren't usually getting these opportunities to come into work? Are you treating people fairly, equally, in that kind of element as well? What's the kind of culture in the community? What does work look like for people in terms of, is it flexible and work that works for them? You can kind of go in a whole world around employee basically, but it's thinking about it at another level, that they're not just a cog in the machine. You're contributing to them as much as they're contributing to you. The next area is clients and contracts. This is specifically for B2B businesses. So are you deciding who you are and aren't working with? And again, we've got some members who work exclusively, let's say, with just other good businesses, whereas some work exclusively with people who are trying to figure out how to be better businesses and helping people along that journey. The third area is supply chain. So in terms of everything you're bringing into the business, whether that's physical or a service, where are you sourcing that from? Could it be from another good business that kind of shares your values? Can you be switching and changing to more alternatives that are better for the planet? That kind of world. The fourth one is the product and service you're putting out into the world. So are you creating a better alternative, if that's a kind of a physical product or service? Are you supplying that product or service to people who usually wouldn't get it? So social enterprise works a lot in that world, supporting beneficiaries who can't access things, and they're offering that as the service into the world. The fifth one is communities. So that's looking at both the local community that the business operates in, as well as the kind of wider kind of globe, let's say, the people in the world. How are you contributing back, whether that be kind of donating time, resources, engaging in partnerships in different ways, so that you're not working just in isolation as an organization. There's an ecosystem you're in, and how are you contributing to enable that to flourish? And the last area, the sixth area, is the environment, which I don't think I should go into too much detail. I think it's very topical right now. So what's the impact you're having in the environment, and what responsibility you're taking on in that area as well? So like I said, as a community, we've identified what a lot of our members are doing in these different areas. So as part of actually the onboarding process, members can communicate what they're doing, what they're planning on doing, the journey that they're on as well. And we can connect members based on that to be like, oh, you're looking at, your kind of net carbon journey. These members have done this as well. Why not have a chat with them about what they're doing around this? Or you're looking at supply chain specifically, let's say kind of products. If they're looking at sustainable packaging, that kind of thing, we'll match them up to other members who've gone through that journey as well, to kind of share lessons unlock kind of doors to certain opportunities in that way as well.
Great, love your approach, and I completely agree. It's not about the getting a certificate or a stamp on your business. It's what you're doing behind it. Yeah, I really love how you also circle this whole story about founders being in a community and growing within the community, because I think for a lot of founders, the journey is about beating all the competitors and like be the only ones and just being better. And it's such a lonely journey. So I love how you're trying to engage other business and like help them be better businesses.
Absolutely.
And I wanted to come back to your journey of bootstrapping as well, because this is also something that a lot of founders want to know, because again, like you said, it's not about the goal, right? It's about the journey, about the process. And for a lot of businesses, getting the funding is the goal, is the success point. How do you motivate yourself when you're bootstrapping, when it's not your goal, when your goal is something bigger and more sustainable?
So I think for me, I've always taken the kind of the lean approach to startups. I think there's two reasons why that I think is really valuable. One is that you can kind of get started tomorrow, and two, the focus actually is on developing a high quality offering. So I think there's certain businesses obviously that would require investment to invest in the development of a product. So I think that kind of aside, that there are obviously businesses that have to do that. If you get investment, some of the pressure kind of gets taken off actually of being able to create that income. So I think for me as an individual, actually testing the pricing and getting it right, one was proving that this is going to work long term. So I think there's some businesses who do everything for free and then they start charging and looking at the business model, and it might not even work further down the line. You invested all those resources into it, so that was part of it. And the other element was, if it's good enough quality, that also shows the sustainability long term and how we're going to be different in the market as well. So I think if we had got an investment, potentially that drive wouldn't be there in the same way. And I've seen it before where businesses haven't got the motivation sometimes, because once they've got the funding, it's more coming towards the end of the funding that they're like, oh my gosh, we haven't got where we wanted to, in a sense that some of the urgency leaves. And in fact, an entrepreneur, I've kind of followed his journey. He started a couple of businesses. I interviewed him once, and he said the first thing he does whenever he starts a business is hire someone, because he's then responsible to pay for their salary, and that is what motivates him to get out and go and hustle and to make it work. So that was the approach that I took. And I think for me, the only times that we've kind of looked at getting funding in, like I said, to kind of build capacity, is that point where you're like, okay, we're at the point where things are working, but we're hitting the ceiling as a team in terms of capacity. And yes, we could keep going for another 6 months and try to get to that next milestone when we can hire someone, or if we can actually map it out. So you're de-risking it, by 6 months you should be able to afford someone. How can you bridge the gap and get some capital in to hire someone immediately to get to that next point? That's the only time I've kind of really considered and brought in funding was those moments.
Okay. And, since we're talking about demystifying the founder's journey, what was the biggest myth that you had to shatter for yourself?
I think the moment that has really stuck with me in terms of a founder, and that made a real difference when I got onto the other side of it. And I think I put more pressure on myself because I've been working with startups. So I kind of was like, I've helped other founders start up businesses by working in them and to running accelerators. So when I set up the business, I kind of thought, wow, I really need to get this right, because I've kind of been helping other people get it right. So I think in the first 1.5 to 2 years, I was quite worried about being very honest about where my challenges were and what I was stuck on and all those different things, because I felt if I shared it with people, they would turn to me and be like, Sara, you have no idea what you're doing. You need to pack this all up immediately. This is very irresponsible. So I was so terrified of letting people in to hear that. But when I really realized that my fear of looking bad was going to get in the way of what I was trying to create, because I knew also fundamentally I as an individual not be able to create the business that I'm kind of dreaming up, right? It's going to take way more, not just like literally hands on deck to make it happen, but thinking and different experience into it as well. That's the moment I decided to build my advisory board and start to grow the team as well. So that was hugely pivotal, I think, for me as a founder, of really letting go of that worry of looking good, and really, I guess, probably leaning into that much more in terms of the club and trying to create those spaces for other members as well, of like, and I guess practicing what we preach. Like, if I'm going around pretending like I've got everything sorted, not talking about it, why would anyone else in the club be honest about really what the challenges were? So I feel like that moment unlocked a lot for me personally, and let go of a lot of whatever I was holding on to, and just I'm much more now open and honest about it, and it's just less pressure, which is nice, and just enjoy it a lot more while still figuring it out as I go.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, once you let it go, I think just like go into the therapist.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and yeah, so is there work-life balance to the life of a founder, or it's mostly just, about getting scrappy and just like trying to figure it out all the time?
I think that's a really good question as well. So I think I learned a lot about work-life balance when I actually did work in other startups. I think at the beginning, I didn't really know how to set boundaries. Especially when you're passionate about stuff, and the business I was working with, I was really excited about contributing to them. That can kind of, if you haven't got the boundaries in place, run away from you. So you end up doing really long days. I burnt out twice. And I think that really like taught me the impact of that as well. Like, then not being able to work for, nearly a week afterwards, when you feel like there's so much you still have to do, was like, it made me realize that, boundaries are important. And I think there's a lot in society that still encourages this kind of hustle. Like, if you're not working like 24 hours on your business, you don't care enough, and you're lazy, and you're not going to go anywhere.
Right.
I think with the club, I knew that I wanted to, I guess, enjoy the process and enjoy my life now, not at this end destination when it is this X point, basically. And I'd learned also that looking after myself, and that meant, making time for rest, making time for other things, meant that I approached my work much better than if I am working all hours of the day on it. So I think you can get a work-life balance. I think I've got a good one, and yes, certain weeks it's better than others for sure. But I also think it's important for that to look like something for you individually, right? So certain people might prefer working in the mornings or the evenings. Some people have other responsibilities like kids. They have to work around that, right? So I think it's understanding what your parameters are, knowing what enough in a day specifically looks and feels like, and allowing yourself to clock off and to rest, and booking other things. And I try to only do 5 days a week. Sometimes it's not Monday to Friday, it could be Tuesday to Saturday, but I try to keep that really clear and ensure that I'm taking downtime around that as well during the day and during the weekend as well. And I feel like I do come to work always pretty clear, and I think that is because I'm not focused on it, or it's sat at my laptop all day in that sense.
No, that's super important, and that's fantastic that you've come to a realization that boundaries are super important, because you also notice that there is still this romantic part of hassling, and if you're not hassling, then what are you doing? Because there are a ton of side hassles. Like, if you open Medium, all the trending articles are about side hassles, and you kind of feel like, I don't have one, should I? I mean,
yeah. And you know what, I think also in the early days, you have got so much motivation and energy, But that goes away. Like, I think that's why this year has been so tough, because I haven't got that same exciting buzz of getting something new out in the world. It's not new anymore, and now I've just got to sustain it. And I think I also prefer working in early stage things anyway. But actually, you need to really protect that energy and ensure that you are keeping yourself energized, because yes, there's a short-term burnout you might experience, but also long-term, this isn't a sprint, right? Like, you have to think about that long-term energy and keep that motivation. And if you put too much in and don't get enough out, and it's exhausting and all those things, you're probably going to fall out of love with it as well. And then what was the point of putting all that dedicating your time into it as well? So I think it's important to think about short-term what works, so you're thinking it's going to help with the long term as well.
All right. So what is the next step for the Good Business Club? Do you have a growth strategy, like 5 years, 10 years, I don't know, maybe even a couple of months?
Yeah, I mean, we do have like a 5-year plan as well. For me at the moment, I'm very much looking at how we grow our team. So we've just welcomed our second team member in. So I'm in the process of getting them onboarded and integrated into the community. So looking at bringing someone else in short term as well to help us deliver some of the event programs we're doing. We are focused very much on kind of partnerships as well. So looking at how we can create those more localized hubs through partnerships. That's very much where my head's at in the next kind of 12 to 18 months, is looking at that, launching different sort of event programs. So kind of going back to where we were 2 years, really looking at some of the strategy there in terms of how we wanted to bring people together, and actually starting to launch some of those offers into the mix as well to have a higher impact for members in the community. And yeah, just trying to grow bigger across the UK is our kind of focus. So the hubs that have organically come up, we're just really focusing in terms of activity and connecting more businesses locally into the community that way as well.
That's awesome. All right. And what is your best advice to a founder that thinks about growing their business through a community?
I think the hardest thing to do is ask for help. That's the biggest thing I've learned personally, as I've shared, but also when we talk to members. So I think, really practicing and flexing that muscle of asking for help is the biggest thing you can do, and just get really comfortable with that. Because if you're able to ask for help, then whoever is around you will be able to contribute to you. It doesn't actually matter how amazing your community is if you're not actually going to ask for help, right? So I think obviously find a community first. Really don't do it alone. No one's expecting you to do it alone. You're just making it a lot harder for yourself. And just practice asking for help, so when you need it, you can actually go. And whether that is just a few people that you really trust, and as you grow that, you'll get more comfortable to ask absolutely anyone that you just go, oh, I wonder if this person can help. I'll just ask them for help, and you just get used to it. So practice with people that you trust and who know you. But that has made all the difference now, to just being able to ask, and you get so much in return. You'll be really surprised.
Right. And even ask people you don't know. I mean, sometimes that works too. Just go there with full honesty, tell them what you want, and most importantly, what you can get them in exchange.
Yeah.
That's amazing, Sarah. I mean, I loved talking to you as the last time, as the time before that. Thank you for sharing your experience. I think this is extremely valuable, because know it all about the community, and I think this is something that a lot of people are working towards right now, because it's the most holistic way to grow.
Yeah.
So thank you for doing this.
Thanks, Anna, for having me. I really appreciate it. And it's been, I think I've just rambled half the time. It's been really enjoyable. Thank you.
No, that was great. Super. So I hope to have you here again someday. And good luck with your new venture. I'm not going to reveal what it is.
Thanks, Anna.
But thank you. Okay. And